Let's talk now. Let's move on to another topic and talk about the fact that the Labour Party want to relax strike laws. Yeah, that's right, because we didn't have enough strikes over the past year. You know, every 5 seconds the trains weren't running and the doctors were on the picket lines, joined by those weirdos with the short fringes and blue hairstyles from the Socialist Workers' Party waving their banners. We don't have enough of that. We need to relax the laws so we can do that more. We love a good strike. May as well just become France at this stage. How about we burn some car tyres while we're at it? Well, apparently, Labour want to relax strike laws, which of course means more strikes, which will then mean having to acquiesce to the demands of the strikers, which will mean higher pay in the public sector, because the vast majority of people, I think 49% of public sector workers are unionists compared to 12% in the private sector. So we're going to have to put up their wages because they'll refuse to come to work because then the strike laws are relaxed. And guess who's going to have to pay for it? That's right, you and me, the taxpayers. Well, to find out more, let's speak to Professor Len Shackleton, Editorial and Research Fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs. I mean, to me, Len, this is... well, it's a sort of obvious chain of events, isn't it? You allow more people to go on strike and they see that striking works because it gets rewarded with higher pay. And you're going to have more strikes, more demands for higher pay, which will have to be heeded. Otherwise, there'll be more strikes. And then with the higher pay will come higher taxes.
Yeah, you've got a clear outline of the story there, I think, Alex. This is the danger. Of course, it won't necessarily happen, but it is interesting. I mean, is this the time to be loosening the strike laws? Is it the time to be taking these other measures which Labour are doing to try to encourage union membership? For example, making union recognition easier. Allowing recruiters to go into companies, to go online in companies and so forth. Do we actually want a much larger, a much more powerful trade union movement? I wonder about this. I mean, we're seeing the highest, as you mentioned, we're seeing the highest level of strikes for 30 years. And you know, this is causing disruption. It is going to be passed on in terms of higher pay, which the taxpayer is going to have to cough up for in the public sector, where the great strength of unions is. So, yeah, I think there is quite a bit in your story there, I think.
I mean, what is the relationship between Labour and the unions today? Because most people would sit there listening to this and think, you know, the more you strengthen the arm of the unions, the more chaos you're going to get. And at the end of the day, it's a government who has to deal with that chaos when it comes to people working in the public sector, or indeed refusing to go to work in the public sector. And yet the relationship for a long time between Labour and the unions has very much been a financial one. They put a lot of money in the Labour Party's coffers, don't they?
They do, not so much this time, where they managed to get quite a lot of funding from business and from private individuals and so on. But in the 2019 election, I think the unions funded 5.4 million out of 5.9 million that Labour spent on that election. So yeah, they are in a sense union paymasters.
That's a lot. 5.4 million out of 5.9 million. It's a heck of a lot. I mean, I'd imagine the reason that businesses started throwing cash into the coffers of the Labour Party this last time round is because it is patently obvious they were going to be the ones in 10 Downing Street, and so they want to make some friends before that happens. I want to bring Tom in to this. I mean, you know, the problem I have with the unions and you know, strengthening the unions and then indeed constantly giving rewards to the public sector is it creates a false economy, doesn't it? And it's getting to a stage now, you know, as they're bemoaning the fact this morning, when you work in the private sector, I'm self-employed, so, you know, my pension is zero. I'm going to end up under a motorway bridge surrounded by cats by the time I'm 70 years old, if I make it that far. And yet now I'm going to be paying money to pay for not just the increased pay of people in the public sector, but things like their pensions as well. Are we going to end up in a situation where people are just going to go, well, I may as well work in the public sector because the private sector doesn't pay as well, and then you end up basically with Soviet Britain?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of coverage about the train drivers, right, who I think now are going to be getting salaries of up to 80 grand, which seems to me to be extraordinary. But my understanding is also pretty much given a blank cheque. They were given this I think it was sort of 15% pay increase with no commitments they had to meet on reforming workplace practices. It was a blank cheque. And in terms of Labour being sort of less dependent on union money, I tell you what really shocked me was a story a few weeks ago. Sue Gray, who's Starmer's chief of staff, who obviously was centre of the Partygate situation. Her son is now an MP. Okay, and immediately he was given a job as a PPS in the Transport Department. And who gave him a $4,000 donation? ASLEF, the Train Drivers Union. That just seems to me all wrong. To say that smells would be an understatement. And I think, and of course, the Chancellor's watchword apparently is growth. Growth is just going to appear out of nowhere, and that's going to pay for all of these different things. Well, you're not going to get growth if you strangle the economy with repeated strikes. We had a Transport Secretary boasting that she'd ended the strikes, and then 2 days later they said, actually, no, we're going to carry on striking. So this is Labour all over. It's grimly depressing. It's going to be very bad for the country. They're not going to get the growth they want. And it's bad news.
Len, I'd imagine you'd probably agree with that, but is there an argument? Because the argument Labour would make is in order to generate growth, you need infrastructure that functions, you need trains to run on time, you need doctors turning up to work in hospitals so people are fit and well to contribute to the economy.
Well, of course, there is that argument, but I think the question Tom touched on there about productivity. I think if we are to be investing in infrastructure, if we are to be investing in new businesses and so forth, we do need to ensure that productivity is being boosted, that workers are producing the goods for the public, if it's in the public sector, and for shareholders, if it's in the private sector. I mean, a lot of this discussion is about the public sector, of course, but it is worth mentioning that the private sector is in the private sector, strikes in a way are kind of self-limiting, because you've got shareholders who need to make a settlement. You've got workers who fear they might lose their jobs if they push it too far and so forth. So most private sector strikes do get ended in some kind of reasonable time. The problem with the public sector, of course, is that the government can't go bust, and that there is no obvious limit to how far the unions can push this. What they do, of course, is they're using the public against the government. They try to make the government unpopular by having all these problems. I mean, we saw that with the tail end of the Conservative administration, and I think we will see it again with the Labour Party. And one of the things I've just got this new book out on this, and one of the things which I think a lot of people in the Labour Party have forgotten is the mess which the trade unions made of the Wilson and Callaghan governments in the 1970s. And, Keir Starmer needs to be very careful that we don't kind of replicate that kind of situation in the 21st century.
Well, here's hoping, but I feel that if it's a mess you're after, that is one thing that Starmer probably will deliver in droves. Thank you ever so much, Len, for joining us.